Capitol, a notable moment of bipartisanship happened in the state Senate when state senators approved a bill unanimously to raise teacher pay. State lawmakers are also working in committees to hammer out how much to spend in taxpayer dollars over these next 2 years. And that's all unfolding as a public health scare is growing in West Texas. The number of measles cases keeps climbing, and a young child is the first to die from that outbreak.
We want to talk through all of these developments and, of course, get some insight from two former state lawmakers. We want to start with Dennis Bonnen, former Speaker of the House and representing Southeast Texas. That's over here on my, let me see, stage left, stage right. Then Mark Strama over by Will, that's how we'll do this, served as a Democratic representative for the Austin area. So thanks to both of you for coming back and joining us, no matter what side you're on this week. We do want to start, we see lawmakers taking a different approach, tackling education differently than we've seen in the past, tackling school vouchers separately from this teacher pay measure that we're seeing chugging along. Why do you think the strategy this time to split those apart? And do you think it will stick, or might we see these things come together at some point?
Well, they can't come together because in the House, if they start separate, they will have a problem within their rules of creating one massive bill. It'll be a two-subject rule. So I don't see them coming together. With that said, they are tethered together. The House school choice bill says that we have to pass school finance, which has the teacher pay raise within that bill. And so I think part of this is bipartisanship. Democrat legislators said, I don't want you to pile all this into one bill and force me to be able to vote for my teacher pay raise. I have to vote for school choice. And so I think it's actually a great sign of bipartisanship saying, we'll separate these issues out so that you can vote how you feel about school choice and you can vote how you feel on the teacher pay raises, which of course everyone is for. And so it's, I think, a show of bipartisanship and respect to separate those issues, even though both will pass.
And Mark, do you think that that potentially provides cover to Republicans who are facing some criticism about potentially, siphoning off public dollars for private school tuition?
Probably not.
Okay.
But first of all, I think I hadn't thought about it the way you just described it, but that seems pretty fair. Like that actually provides cover to Democrats to let them vote for the pay increase and vote for school funding and vote against vouchers. I don't know if Republicans are looking for cover on their vote for vouchers. I think that they view it as a political asset. We should talk about why. There is not popular support for vouchers. There is not public demand for vouchers. There is a narrow constituency for vouchers, but it happens to be the prevailing view of the majority of people who vote in Republican primaries. And so, because most Republican legislators are elected in their primary and don't have a competitive district in the general election, they just need the cover of voting yes on what has become a litmus test issue for Republicans in the primary.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
I disagree.
Okay.
I think that there are many Republicans, and I really am frustrated that this issue is being discussed in the manner of it's a one or the other. You can be for your public schools. You can be a great advocate for public education, and you can also be an advocate for empowering parents to have greater choice in their children's education. Those do not have to be against each other. And so I think many Republicans actually, cover is not the word I would use, but they are excited to be able to provide to their constituents that school choice for the parents to make for their children's education while doing more funding and teacher raises for their public schools. That's the thing that I think is so off base in this conversation. And we were at Mark's dinner Monday night about civility and government engagement. And the reality of it is we've got to stop this game of if you're for that, you're against this. That's garbage. Someone who's for school choice is not against public schools. You can be both. And I think that's what you're seeing from a lot of Republicans. They're very excited. The Republicans in the House and Senate have made it a high priority that we're going to pay our teachers more. The legislature is going to do that. By the way, that's a local issue. That's the state stepping up with additional dollars to take care of those teachers. And so I don't think it's an either or, and I wish people would quit saying you're either one or you're the other.
If we can just maybe bring this one to a close. Your original question was, have these two issues been separated in a way that will keep them separate? And the answer to that is, even though they're in separate bills, probably not. Because what's likely to happen as it gets to the end of the session is that as the governor said last session, he's going to say you can't have one without the other. And I'm not going to support all of this funding for schools and teachers if I don't also get my way on vouchers. Now, that won't change the way Democrats vote on vouchers, but it is the macro dynamic of this session, that there's a lot of money available to fund public education with. Some of that money, based on the leadership of the legislature's sort of express kind of priority, is to divert some of it to private schools.
We will get back to something happening at the Capitol in just a moment, but I want to talk about something that's happening outside the building too. So tomorrow we're expecting to hear from both Austin and Travis County leaders about how they are monitoring and preparing for any potential measles cases. Again, there have been none confirmed in our area specifically, but the state health department is sharing updates about the work it's doing to address this outbreak in West Texas. However, we have not heard publicly from any of the major state leaders, including Governor Greg Abbott, about this. Do you think it would be worth more to hear from him or one of these other state leaders about how to prevent this and stay safe?
Well, certainly. I mean, whenever you have something like this, I wouldn't say they haven't said anything yet, in the sense that I think it's, unfortunately, we just had our first death, tragically. So I think it's on the very front cusp of this situation. So I think it'd be interesting to see if we do hear from the governor or someone in the next day or two on the matter. The reality of it is, you know, these are local issues that they've got to do their job in those local health departments. We need to make sure this doesn't get beyond West Texas. And I think the health departments are coordinating across the state to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I can assure you that the governor and state leadership, whatever resources that would be needed, will be provided if they are needed. Because at this point, it really comes down to whether you have a 95+% measles vaccination rate as to whether this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's noteworthy, as I kind of try to read between the lines of the news coverage of this, there must be some extensive contact tracing happening of the cases that have been identified, because we all got the alert that there was an exposure or a potential exposure at Texas State University and in the New Braunfels area.
Right.
So somebody is doing the work, and I assume it's the state health agencies that are doing the work to make sure that we identify the risks of spread. That's good. I'm glad that's being done. Let's be clear about what the public messaging needs to be. It needs to not just be, and it is a tragedy, as Dennis said, that this child has died. The public messaging to keep us safe is people need to get vaccinated. And for some reason, that's become a controversial issue in the Republican Party. It's controversial because of who our new Secretary of Health and Human Services is under the Trump administration. But it shouldn't be. That child should be alive.
Do you think the controversial nature of that topic is why we haven't heard from our state leaders yet? Or, as you said, is it just too soon to be commenting on this?
I think it's a little soon at this point, and we'll see whether we hear from them or not. But I think it's also early, and we'll see what happens in the coming days.
I mean, the death was recent, but the outbreak is now a week old, and it's over 100 cases. And that is something that hasn't happened in over a decade. This disease was considered eradicated because of the vaccine. And then people started developing skepticism about the vaccine. That skepticism predates Trump, by the way, and it's as common on the far left as on the far right.
Right.
It is a real byproduct of misinformation in an age of algorithmically curated news streams that aren't mediated by authentic news sources like you guys.
I do know we'll be watching for any statements or reaction. While we've still got some time here, so we cover a lot of big flashy bills, things that make headlines here, and we talk about those. But what often doesn't make headlines, and that's going on this week, appropriations hearings. So we do want to explain for folks that is where state leaders are coming before lawmakers. They are telling people how much it costs to do the things they do. Lawmakers will be divvying out those funds. Give us a sense of, how important are appropriations? It's something our audience rarely will get to hear the nitty-gritty details of.
Yeah. It's the only bill that has to pass. It's all that matters. A conservative senior legislator, when I first came to the House, said, we only got to do one thing, pass the budget. I was actually visiting with a legislator last night, and it's overlooked. I'm glad we're talking about it, because being a subcommittee chair on appropriations or Senate Finance is a really big deal, because you're helping manage billions upon billions of dollars. And so the budget is kind of the big enchilada that people look right past, because it is significant. Now, with that said, I think part of why people look past it is we have to have a balanced budget constitutionally. I mean, We don't have a printing press in Austin, Texas, like they have in Washington, D.C., where you can print money you don't have and go spend it. So I think some people don't focus on it to the level they could because we have good fiscal management in Texas. We do balance our budget. We only spend what we have, and we've been dealing in surpluses. But it is huge work because talking about those surpluses. Is that money going to be spent on property tax reductions? $10 billion is in the House and Senate budget to do that. Is that money going to be spent on more money for pub ed? There's billions of dollars in there for new money for pub ed. School choice, there's $1 billion in there for school choice. So think about it. We talk about these policy bills over here, but where the rubber meets the road on so many is in that budget.
Yeah, that price tag that comes
That's
with
right.
it. Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you because I was talking to one of my students who observed some of those hearings yesterday. I think 100 people testified at the Subcommittee of Appropriations on Health
180.
and Human Services. Yeah, I think that's right. And my student was just like, this is actually amazing. People in the public get to go talk to legislators and tell them why that money matters to them. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought it's amazing too. Look, people come to Austin after getting elected with some preconceived ideas based on their experience and what they'd read and heard about the state budget and the state legislature. They come up and they get a heavy dose of the real world in the form of those hearings. And a lot of people's views evolve as a result of it. It's not inconsequential what gets presented in those hearings. It doesn't necessarily change somebody's whole view of the world or their ideology, but it changes some.
All right, we will leave our conversation there because we could go much, much longer at this point. But Mark Strama, Dennis Bonnen, thanks so much again for joining us. They will be back next Thursday for more updates about the latest developments in state politics. For now, though.